Well, hello there everyone! I figured it's about time I make some Phantasy Star related content, and while I mostly plan to look more at Phantasy Star Online 2, I think, well, hey, why not start with the original game for shits and giggles? Phantasy Star was one of the first RPGs ever made, and while Dragon Quest focused more on fantasy aspects of things, Phantasy Star, ironically enough, despite its name, focused far more on science fiction, taking place in the Algol solar system with you journeying across 3 separate planets. It was also one of the first games to be a first-person dungeon crawler, and the first one to have smooth scrolling thrown in. And unlike other RPGs that had completely blank slates for characters, here you had a set cast of 4 characters, each with their own dedicated side quest thrown in. It's an impressive game for the time, but today we're here to talk about the boss fights, so let's cover the bosses of Phantasy Star 1 from worst to best, because why the heck not? Also, I won't be tiering any of these bosses because it's a turn-based RPG from 1987. Number 13, The Shadow. You'd think for being one of the last bosses in the game this guy might be a bit interesting, but nope! He's pathetically weak, even weaker than most of the fights in the early game, and he's a fake-out fight against your main antagonist. Except he's very clearly a fake-out because he's just a reskin of an earlier game boss. To tell you how pathetic he is, they removed him from the remake and replaced him with a Black Dragon fight. I think that says all you need to know. And yeah, this guy doesn't even really last more than 2 turns. If he lasts more than 2 turns, you're doing something wrong. Number 12, Robot Cop. This fight is meant to act as a gatekeeper to the endgame, stopping you from wandering into the final dungeon early, but he barely tickles you with his attacks, and 110 HP doesn't really cut it, even by early game standards. Never mind the final area of the game. He does look pretty cool though, so I guess there's that, and he's not exactly a complete waste of time like the Shadow is, so he gets a little bit higher. Number 11, The Nightmare. You know how some JRPGs nowadays have fights you're forced to lose for the sake of plot? Well, guess what? This is kind of where they began. The Nightmare is a plot boss designed to basically be impossible to beat with his extremely high attack and ability to stun your party members. Yeah, there's not much else to him. He's a plot boss meant to foreshadow the final battle of the game and the location that you fight him in. He's not bad, but he kills you too quickly to really be worth acknowledging, other than, again, he's a plot boss. Number 10, The Red Dragon. Around halfway through the game, you get the freedom to explore the entire solar system and tackle your 4 party member quests. The Red Dragon is the boss for Alice, and is also pathetically easy because for some reason he has lower stats than the Blue Dragon, which had to be fought much earlier in the game, and for some reason this guy guards the strongest weapon in the game, at least for Alice. He does look cool, so I guess there's that, but there's not much else to him, and again, he's a reskin, so what do you want me to say on this? Actually, it's kind of a weird trend in this game. A lot of the reskin enemies have noticeably lower health than their required early game counterparts. I'm not sure why. Number 9, Tarzamal. Another character quest boss, Tarzamal is part of Noah's questline, and unlike other bosses, this becomes a 1v1, but honestly what's kind of annoying is he barely ever attacks you. Instead, he opts to just put up a magic barrier most of the time, which can get kind of tedious in a fight where all you really have is a mage character, so you're going to be spamming magic and hoping he just dies quickly. At least you get the mantle out of it, but yeah, I don't have much else to say for this fight. Number 8, The Titan. Hey look, another character quest boss, this time for Meow. Titan stands out a little bit because he takes place earlier in the game than the other quest bosses do, and the icy color of the dungeon is somewhat more memorable of a backdrop. Otherwise, he's gonna do exactly what you think, and just go and hit you hard while having a fair bit of HP for the early game. Though I will give a little bit of credit, he has an animated attack sprite that, even though it is basic, it's just his fist going out, that is pretty cool for 1987, and yeah, I can give some serious credit for that, because even games nowadays don't always have animated sprites. Number 7, The Skeleton. It's kind of weird that the first boss of the game is technically optional, but whatever, that's not that important. The Skeleton is a decent enough stat check for a fight roughly an hour into the game, and the reward you get for beating him is a significant upgrade to Meow's attack stat, which is always useful since we're lugging around this cat whether we like it or not, though thankfully the cat's actually not a useless party member. In fact, for better or for worse, everyone in this party is pretty good, though that might just be due to the fact that we only have 4 party members, so you're gonna have to use all of them regardless. Either way, Skeleton does a decent enough job being an early game stat check, and I mean, while again basic, I kinda like his whole arm slashing animation. It looks neat and also kinda funny. Number 6, Medusa. The best of our character quest bosses, Medusa actually has enough HP to be somewhat threatening in the late game, and she has the ability to turn party members to stone, effectively instantly killing them, which is very terrifying in a game that doesn't really have a way to revive party members in battle. In fact, it was actually a huge deal in Phantasy Star 2 when you could finally find a rare item that did. But the game warns you about her ability to turn people to stone, so it wants you to find the mirror shield in this dungeon, which is a good example of a puzzle boss, at least a very early example of it, which at that point she's a fairly easy fight, but the unique design stands out, and again, being one of the first examples of a puzzle boss in an RPG is something I can kind of commend. Number 5, the Blue Dragon. A much beloved Xbox 360 RPG, and overall a pretty solid boss, all things considered. The color palette really stands out after fighting a bunch of red and yellow enemies, and he's actually got somewhat high stats for the early game, with the ability to breathe fire, as well as slash you with his claws, so he's also the first boss to use an elemental attack, showing different types of gear can be useful. Overall, I actually like this fight quite a bit for what it means like as an early game challenge, and I think it's well scaled for when you fight him. Could have done without the Red Dragon reskin fight though, because that battle is very much inferior to this one and kind of drags it down a little bit. Number 4, Emperor Lashake, or Lassic as he's titled in this game. I will say, this is easily the toughest fight in the game, having the second highest health bar, at least not counting the Nightmare in its Force Loss battle, and a downright ridiculous dodge rate, while being at the end of one of the longest dungeons in just about any game I've played. On top of that, he's the only boss to have an all-target attack that hits every single party member every turn, showing just how powerful he is, and yeah, his lightning magic is no joke. All while being given one of the longest gauntlets I've been through in any video game. I'd advise just giving Odin a gun, realistically here. Having him hit the target for 10 damage each turn he's alive is better than gambling on a 1 in 16 chance of maybe hitting him for 20-ish damage. But I do have to give one piece of massive credit to this boss fight, and that is his battle theme. As far as I can tell, this is the first video game to have a fake-out final boss, and the first time a video game, like a non-final boss, got his own battle theme. So, you know what? Have a listen to it. It's pretty good. My fight against him was extremely tough, and it actually came down to the wire with only Alice being left alive and getting very low on HP, but man was it satisfying when I pulled that win off. That being said, I will warn you, if you don't have special items that let you escape a dungeon, you're probably going to have to keep resetting until you have enough MP to get out of there, because, yeah, this game has a really weird issue where you can get stuck in the final dungeon if you don't have a means of warping out at this point, because there's no healing spot anywhere after you get to the Sky Castle part. That's definitely a bit of an oversight. Number 3, Dr. Mad. Okay, I gotta be honest, I actually love this guy's name. Anyways, Dr. Mad is much stronger than any other early game boss fight, sporting a mighty 233 HP, which is massive when you consider that Lashake had 238, and he's the second to last fight in the entire game. Anyways, depending on the answers you give him here, he can actually instantly kill Meow before the fight begins, and as you know, there's no reviving in this game, at least not without resting at a hospital. But he's also very weak to the rope spell, so it allows Alice to put her abilities to bind foes to use against an otherwise really tough opponent, and he has, in my opinion, one of the coolest attack animations in the game, where he opens up his chest to fire a missile out at you. It's good for what it needs to be, and I think overall it's a solid fight. I just kind of wish it didn't get reskinned into being the Shadow, because that fight's just really boring and much lesser in comparison. Number 2, the Elytron Dragon. Elytron Dragon is actually pretty awesome settings-wise, as it takes place in the skies above Palma while you fly up to the air castle, and being able to see the clouds below you gives the fight a unique background that, while simple, looks nice. He also stands out for having the largest moveset in the game, being able to breathe fire, slash you with his claws, and he can offset his low HP by healing himself. Though, thankfully, he has fairly limited MP, so he's only going to do it like twice max, but it does give the fight a little bit of something interesting there. Plus, he has a unique design not seen from the other dragons, which is cool, and clearly, someone at Sega must have liked this fight because they actually brought him back in Phantasy Star Online 2, and oh boy did they give him quite the glow up. Number 1. Dark Fowls. Nowadays, it's kind of a cliche in games, but the idea of an ancient demon being the one to supply Emperor Leshake his powers, while also being hinted at earlier in the game by the menacing music in the Governor's House as well as the Nightmare battle itself and some NPC dialogue, this fight was actually really well built up and well done for its time. But he has a little bit more to him than just an awesome and menacing design, as he also has the largest health total in the game, being a number so high the game can't display it, probably around 400-ish, and the only boss in the game capable of double attacking to show how strong he is, but thankfully his attacks are single target, so you're not going to be getting nuked down or being forced on a very short time limit. And to round it off, he even has a unique cutscene should you beat him after Alice is killed, plus I think his final boss theme's also pretty good. I definitely prefer the Sega Genesis sound chip for it though, but that's just me. Sega must have known they were cooking something when they made this guy, considering that he went on to become their longest running antagonist, still being an active threat in the Phantasy Star games released today. Granted, he always takes his various different forms and has different themes, but it all got started here, and I can safely say, yeah, he is the best boss in the game, and also probably the second toughest, but probably the hardest one if you didn't have to go through all that hell that was the Air Castle dungeon. And that's all I got for this video. I definitely want to cover more Phantasy Star content in the future, but I figured why not look at the oldest game that started it all at first. While I'd easily recommend the PS2 remake over this original any day of the week, I can honestly say playing through it wasn't a bad time, though I think a lot of that might be due to the Sega Ages port, which added quite a bit of quality of life. That's definitely the version I'd recommend if you really want to play the original, and you can get it pretty easily on your Switch or other modern consoles. It comes with a map, it comes with different experience modifiers and other things. It's actually a pretty good port. That's all I got for this video. If you liked this retro ranking and want to see more of these, let me know, and I might try more in the future. And if you want to see more videos like this, consider liking and subscribing to see more videos of varying quality, and I will see you all next time. On that note, take care everyone.